Everywhere we look, South Carolina is growing. Our economy is booming. Last year was the most successful year for economic growth in our state's history, with a record for the largest capital investment project broken twice in the same year, and that's Redwood, of course, and BMW. This year, we're off to a great start. In the first 6 months of this year, 2023, we've announced 46 projects which will create over 9,408 new jobs with $5.48 billion in new capital investment. And you remember last year we totaled out at about 13.3, I think. The decision by the global automaker Volkswagen to locate their new Scout electric sports utility vehicle manufacturing facility in the Midlands was a great victory for our state. It will bring opportunity and prosperity to the region, which really needs it for generations to come. State government is in the best fiscal shape ever. We have the largest budget surplus, the largest rainy day reserve fund, and the lowest debt we've ever had. We cut taxes on our small businesses, and we've returned money back to the taxpayers. Until recently, South Carolina had the highest personal income tax rate in the Southeast and the 12th highest in the nation, but that's no more. Last year, I was honored to sign into law the largest income tax cut in state history. This year, taxpayers will keep an additional $96.2 million of their hard-earned money instead of sending it into the state government. Over the last 6 years, our successful partnership with the General Assembly has produced resounding win after win for the people of the state of South Carolina. And that's what a good partnership is supposed to do. This year's budget includes a record number of 283 proposals from my executive budget totaling $3.3 billion. This is an increase of 24 items from last year and 117 items from 2 years ago. That shows cooperation. From the beginning of this budget process to right now, we have communicated, collaborated, and cooperated with the legislative leadership, the budget chairman, and their staffs. I'm not sure if there has been a time in recent history when the governor's office and staff and the General Assembly and their staff have worked so closely together in the budget process. It was a real pleasure. This legislative session may be remembered as one of the most substantial in decades. We have begun the long overdue restructuring of the Department of Health and Environmental Control, as well as the South Carolina's siloed health care delivery agencies. As you know, there's a study being implemented now by the Department of Administration. This state's antiquated certificate of need health care regulations were repealed, finally, unleashing entrepreneurship, capital investment, and competition into the free marketplace. Progress is also made towards closing the revolving door for repeat offenders and criminals with bond reform. However, more remains to be done, including passing graduated penalties for illegal gun possession. We see these criminals, they're career criminals, over and over, doing the same thing and worse over and over, and usually it has an illegal gun in the picture. Innocent lives will be protected with changes to the Heartbeat Act, and strong laws against fentanyl trafficking will give law enforcement and prosecutors the needed tools they need to put those drug dealers in jail. As I've said before, economic growth and preservation of our shared natural heritage and environment are not opposing objectives which must be balanced as in a competition, one against the other. Instead, they and our educational successes are complementary, intertwined, and inseparable, each dependent on the other. These are the three engines of our prosperity and happiness. This budget provides $200 million to the Office of Resilience, which, as you know, was a top priority of mine. It stemmed from the resilience study, floodwater commission that we had 2 years ago. Working with the public and private partners, the state of South Carolina will now begin identifying and preserving culturally or environmentally significant properties and tracts in which resilience and public access are in jeopardy of being lost forever due to development, mismanagement, flooding, erosion, or from storm damage. Remember the question, what will our state look like 100 years from today? We must make that decision now. In the area of K-12 education, we continue to make remarkable progress in raising teacher pay. This is essential for our future prosperity. 6 years ago, the minimum starting salary of a teacher in South Carolina was $30,113, and the average teacher salary was below the Southeastern average. That's not good. Today, the minimum starting salary of a teacher in South Carolina is $40,000, and the average teacher salary is above the Southeastern average. This budget increases teacher salaries by $2,500 at every step of the state salary schedule, making the new minimum starting salary for a teacher $42,500. My goal, as stated before, is by 2026 to have a minimum starting salary of at least $50,000. In addition, new education scholarships will give low-income parents the opportunity to choose the type of education environment and instruction that best suits their child's unique needs, as only the parents know. And public school teachers and their spouses will now be provided parental leave for birth, adoption, or fostering a child. Placing an armed certified resource officer, known as an SRO, in every school, in every county, all day, every day, has been one of my top priorities for years. At my request, the General Assembly began funding a grant program administered by the Department of Public Safety to provide school districts with funds to hire more resource officers for our state's 1,283 public schools. The grant program has been very successful, going from 406 state school resource officers when we began in 2018 to now 1,170 school resource officers, representing almost 94% of all the schools in the state. We're still working and we'll be at 100% before long. We also provided the State Law Enforcement Division with funds to create a state-of-the-art school safety training center for law enforcement and school personnel from around the state. I know of no other state that's done such a thing. This will be located at the Gilbert Elementary School in partnership with the Lexington I School District. Access and affordability to higher education for every South Carolinian, as we know, is essential to ensuring that our state has the best trained and skilled workforce in the country to compete for jobs, careers, and investment in the future. Our state's booming economy has created 105,000 open jobs virtually in all high-demand skilled trades and professions. Working with the South Carolina Technical College System, we created the workforce scholarships for the future at all of our 16 technical colleges, so residents can get a degree or credential in manufacturing, healthcare, computer science, information technology, transportation, logistics, or construction. These workforce scholarships in our technical college system are an integral key to our prosperity in the future, and they greatly surpass any others in any state. In the last 2 years, this very successful program has helped over 10,000 South Carolinians earn an industrial credential or degree in high-demand careers. And that is one thing that the investors from around the world look for, and that's why they come here. This year marks the 4th consecutive year that we have frozen college tuition for in-state students while providing additional funding for needs-based financial aid in any state, public, or private college, university, or at our 16 technical colleges. This is the 4th consecutive year. Every South Carolinian who qualifies for federal need-based financial aid as measured by the federal Pell Grant program will now have sufficient state financial assistance to attend in any state public college, university, or technical college. Students at private schools, independent, historically black colleges, and universities will also receive an additional $20 million for student financial aid and assistance. And this state budget again provides one-time funds to address repairs needed at the aging state-owned buildings and infrastructure on the campuses of our college, universities, and technical colleges. Regarding tuition, again, in January, my executive budget proposed freezing tuition again. We provided an additional recurring annual appropriation of $43 million, which represented a 5.2% increase in their operating budgets. What did we base that on? It was based on the current Higher Education Price Index. Some of you are familiar with the Consumer Price Index. This is the same type of thing. And it was allocated based on the number of in-state students enrolled at each public institution. That's what I asked for. However, the General Assembly instead chose to provide colleges and universities with an additional recurring annual appropriation of $124 million, which is a 17% increase in the operating budgets. Needless to say, this is many times more than what each institution needs to hold the line on tuition as designated by the Higher Education Price Index. That's what we went by. While I have no doubt that each of these institutions could make a passionate case as to why these additional recurring funds are necessary, that is $124 million, I don't think that the parents and students paying tuition would share their confidence. Our unprecedented investments and dependence on higher education demand greater accountability and restraint and economy by these institutions when it comes to the total bill being paid by the students and their parents. Therefore, when we begin this next executive budget process in November, every college and university will be expected to provide my office with a detailed listing of their plans to reduce tuition, fees, charges, and any other items placed on the bill paid by our students and parents. In addition, every college and university will be expected to provide to my office a list of programs, degrees, or other offerings that the institution will eliminate, consolidate, or even add to better align with the state's future workers and workforce needs and to reduce operating costs. What quickly comes to mind are nurses and engineers. We need more of them. There are many others we need. There's some that are being prepared for that have not such great a need. To keep South Carolina safe, we must maintain a robust law enforcement presence across the state, and we must properly fund the police. Our state law enforcement agencies continue to lose valuable and experienced personnel because they are unable to remain competitive with the pay and benefits those same personnel could receive elsewhere. Thanks to the comprehensive compensation review conducted by the Department of Administration, our state law enforcement and criminal justice agencies have begun to stem the tide of personnel loss and recruitment and retention pay raises provided. This budget continues that by providing an additional $25.3 million for recruitment and retention pay raises in fiscal year 23-24. Finally, excuse me, I applaud the General Assembly for passing the most transparent and accountable budget in modern times. After decades of overriding vetoes of successive governors one after another, the leadership of the House and Senate now provides my office and the public with more information than ever before. This year, the General Assembly provided not only information on the sponsors and recipients of earmarked appropriations, but they also disclosed the activity, function, or project for which the earmark was intended, the public purpose served, the budget, a description of community support, and details on the identity and functions of the recipient organizations. I've included in this document various examples of some of the well thought out and meritorious earmark appropriations that were sponsored by members of the General Assembly. For example, Senator Shane Massey sponsored an earmark of over $14 million to construct a new campus and advanced manufacturing center for Piedmont Technical College in Saluda County. That's good. That's an example of how strategic investment can transform a rural community. Representatives Chris Mercy and Cambrell Garvin sponsored $667,000 earmark for Turn 90. That is a community-based charity operating in Charleston and Columbia areas whose mission is to reduce recidivism. Representative Chris Murphy and Jackie Hayes sponsored a $284,000 earmark for Man to Man, a father-focused nonprofit serving men in Darlington, Florence, Marlborough, Marion, and Chesterfield counties. It provides education services to support fathers in those areas. And also Representative Jackie Hayes again sponsored a $100,000 earmark for Healthy Learners, which is a ministry of the Sisters of Charity Health System. Healthy Learners partners with schools and healthcare providers to provide needed services to low-income children. These services address mental health, vision, hearing, and medical needs of children. Those are good ideas. However, although we are transparent, although we did get the information that we asked for and will continue to ask for, I must repeat, there is a better way to accomplish this same goal with transparency and accountability for the taxpayers. I once again ask the General Assembly to create a public, merit-based, competitive grants process for these types of appropriations, especially as it relates to non-governmental organizations. Administered by state agencies, funds would be made available only to entities which demonstrate community support and missions consistent with the policy goals and outcomes intended by the General Assembly. Further, all applications and award criteria would be placed online, allowing for public scrutiny and total transparency. So let me say again, our state government is in the best fiscal shape ever. We have the largest budget surplus, the largest rainy day reserve fund, and the lowest ever in debt in the history of our state. We've cut taxes on small businesses and we've returned money to the taxpayers. Over our last 6 years, our successful partnership with the General Assembly, which is what it ought to be, produced resounding win after win for the people and prosperity of South Carolina. I say again, as I did at the beginning, this year's budget includes a record number, 283 proposals from my executive budget, totaling $3.3 million. That's an increase of 28 items from last year and 117 items from 2 years ago. From the beginning of the budget process to right now, we have communicated, collaborated, and cooperated with the legislative leadership, and it has been unprecedented. Like I said before, I'm not sure there's been a time in recent history where a governor's staff was as immersed in the budget process with the House and Senate staffs and before this year. This is a very good thing, and I have met with the leaders of the House and the Senate. My staff have met with the staffs as well as the leaders of the House and the Senate, constitutional officers, and we've heard from the businesses and people and educators and farmers and everything in between. And it's that kind of information gathering, assimilation, and then working through with the leadership to produce good results for the people, which has become the hallmark of the way we do business in South Carolina. So it's my hope in the future that we will continue to work in this manner. Now there are a few vetoes that you have them listed there. I won't go into those. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to, staff will be glad to go over those with you. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer. Shauna Adcox, Senior Correspondent.
So I believe this is a record low in terms of vetoes in a year of record.
A record low, yeah.
Number of earmarks. I'm kind of surprised you didn't veto more earmarks.
Well, that's a sign of what I was talking about. It didn't have to because we worked so closely with the Speaker and Chairman Peeler and and others that Chairman Bannister, it wasn't necessary. We worked it all out as we were going along. And it works very well.
Are you confident all those legislative earmarks were worthwhile?
I'm confident that we had the information indicating the worthwhile nature of them. Now, could it have been done in a better way? And I've described that. There is a better way, I think, to do it, and that's to have public input as well, to have availability for the people to see exactly what is being proposed, who is proposing it, and the reason for it, and determine if they want to spend that money, because all this tax money, this is tax money. We don't want to be overwhelmed and have government only by earmarks, but the best way to control that and see that what money we have goes to the right places is to have input from the citizens, so they can see where other money is going and what's not coming to them and what they need. And you enter into I think, a more balanced situation where you don't have as many earmarks, but those that you have are very good. More questions? I can't hear you. Well, most of what would have been vetoed were taken out of the budget, because in the leadership, we had conferences in the office. In my office, we went over and spoke to Chairman of Ways and Means Bannister and Chairman Peeler, and we went through all those things weeks ago. So for that reason, it wasn't necessary to have a whole lot of vetoes.
One thing I can think of that wasn't in here that you wanted was $200 million for bridge work.
200 for what?
For bridge work for the DOT. I guess what is not in here that you would have liked?
Well, the main thing that's not in here that I would have liked was to shut that revolving door, which we did not do. And I think that we're going to pay a price for it out there, because it'll be next year before we can get to it. And that is that we have career criminals. Now, we did have a bond reform bill, and it has many good points. But the strongest point that I believe should have been in it, and that law enforcement wanted in it, was to send a message to the career criminals out there, that their careers are over. And the way you do that is when most of these crimes involve illegal guns. And if someone, for example, if someone commits a crime, a violent crime, and they're out on bond, and they commit another crime while they're out on bond for the first crime, and it's usually with a gun, I wanted to have, and law enforcement wanted, a 5-year mandatory penalty for that crime. We didn't get that. Also, instead of the judges imposing the same penalty every time one of these career criminals comes before him or her, if it involves that illegal gun, that penalty should go up. Starts off at least up to 5 years, and next time up to 10, and I think the next time 10 to 20, the next time more than that. But what happens now is they come in, and if they receive a penalty at all, it's usually 0 to 5 years. Well, often 0 to 5 years means 0. That's why we wanted a mandatory penalty for that committing another crime while you're out on bond for the other crime. So we've got to put teeth in these laws, and until we do that, until we give law enforcement the tools that they need to send the message to the criminals, that the career criminals, that their careers are over, then we cannot say that we've shut that revolving door. Yes, we'll keep up. We are growing so fast. People are happy that we're growing so fast. Now, sometimes when the traffic backs up at a work site, which Director Hall and the Department of Transportation Commission, they try to eliminate that so it doesn't slow traffic, and I think they're doing very, very well. But we're about, I think, 6 years ahead of schedule based on the way we're spending the money and how much we have. So our infrastructure, as well as water and sewer and all those things, that kind of infrastructure is essential for peace, safety, happiness, and health all across the state. So when we have the money, it's going to be prioritized for those things.
So to be clear, you're not going to bring the legislature back?
Well, we're thinking about it. I just wish they'd close that revolving door while they were here. They did some good things, but that door is still open. And until we get those graduated increasing penalties for every time these career criminals commit a crime, and until we have mandatory penalties for that breaking the law, committing another crime while you're already out on bond, until we send that strong message, that revolving door is still open. So I wish that they had addressed that when they were here. They had 6 months, and they didn't do it. And I fear that we will hear of the consequences of that. If we were to send that strong message, when the fentanyl bill came down, I signed it that day. The law enforcement was waiting to know the moment I signed that bill so they could start implementing it. They wanted to know the hour, the minute. Well, a lot of law enforcement is still waiting for the hour and minute on closing that revolving door by the mandatory penalty for committing a crime while you're out on bond and for committing the same type of crime over and over and over and getting the same penalty or no penalty. Law enforcement's still waiting on that, and a lot of parents are still waiting on that. And I'm afraid that we go read in the papers and see on TV more things that could have been avoided had our General Assembly responded completely to the requests of law enforcement and slammed that revolving door shut on those career criminals. I want to remind everybody, we know who those people are. They keep getting arrested over and over. You ought to see the rap sheets, they call them, on these people, the lists of the various crimes committed. Some they were not convicted of, some they were. As you know, and it takes so long to get to court, the witnesses move, change, die, memories go hazy. There are all sorts of things that can happen when you have a delay in trials. So that takes some of the teeth out of the law right there. But not having a clear voice from the state to these career criminals that they are going to be punished for their crimes, then they'll keep committing them, unfortunately.
Back on the budget for a moment, or looking ahead actually to next year's budget, as you look at what colleges send you this fall, is there a percentage you'd like to see decrease? Do you want to see tuition go down?
Yeah, I'd like to see tuition go down, so would the parents and the students. I mean, it's just, ma'am? Well, we'll continue to I will urge the legislature to continue to freeze the tuition. But these additional amounts that they've asked for that I mentioned before, where we calculated $43 million and they were almost 3 times that, I think that's an error. And what my office will insist on is we want to know exactly what courses, what are they adding, where is this money going? Are those courses and programs and hirings, do those all are in response to the need of the business industries and people in South Carolina who are they spending money unnecessarily? We just have to have some efficiency, some economy, and some common sense. And very often if you see a program that's costing a lot of money and has a lot of staff members and only producing a handful of students every year, well, that ought to be reevaluated. Listen, we've got great leadership in these colleges and universities. We've got great people that want to be educated, but somehow the request for money is beyond good common sense.
Do you think that they distribute money to colleges fairly among all the universities?
I think it seems that everybody's gotten more than their share, if you ask me.
Anything else? Good. Thank you.
Thank you.